The storm raged. Thunder cracked the sky. The wind blew so hard it forced the church bells to move, causing them to ring, tolling out across the French countryside. A young priest who had been there trying to help with all of the turmoil in the region runs out into the tempest and cries out to God, "How can we help? What can I do? How can I end this?" Truly believing that the end of days had come. And there, in the middle of that storm, he saw a vision of our Blessed Mother, and she told him to pray. And he ran back into the church, and with the huddled masses in there clinging on in fear and terror, he prayed a prayer that has now become legend. So legendary that we make necklaces to wear and wrap around our wrists. Pop stars wear them just to be fashionable. If you didn't know, that's the origin story for the Rosary and how St. Dominic found the prayers. So now as we're here celebrating Our Lady of the Rosary, let's talk about what it means and how we can use it as we walk together down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I'm a Christopagan Druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, I'm Brian. I'm a Christopagan Druid and sous chef to the Dagna.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Rosary. We're going to be actually talking about a lot of different rosaries on this festal day dedicated to Our Lady of the Rosary. We're going to talk about the Dominican Rosary, the Franciscan Rosary. We're going to talk about the Anglican Rosary. We're going to be talking about rosaries galore and also even how you can make your own rosary. Before we get into all of it, whatever app you're listening to us on, be sure to click, subscribe, follow, like, whatever the app says, so that you don't miss an episode of what we do. We do new original Christopagan and Druidic content every day, and you don't want to miss an episode. We have a lot of really good topics coming up, especially with Samhain approaching. So much to talk about. But today, Our Lady of the Rosary. I'm going to say this in the simplest way I possibly can. The Rosary saved my life. Literally, the Rosary saved my life. I grew up Baptist, and then we kind of moved into this non-denominational evangelical thing in the late 80s, early 90s. That was not a good place to be as a young person realizing you're queer. It was not good for your mental health. I'm not going to go through the entire traumatic situation because I do not want to have to give a bunch of trigger warning and cause people to stop listening. But needless to say, on a very dark night of the soul night, instead of making some irrevocably bad decisions, I instead found a copy of San Luis de Montfort's Secret of the Rosary that my great aunt, who was Catholic, had given me. And I read the book. And I didn't own a rosary, so I counted the prayers on my fingers because it's 10 Hail Marys. Wow, I have 10 fingers. Which, by the way, that night and all of that darkness I was struggling with felt like magic. Like I could do this on my fingers because I really wanted to say the prayers, but I didn't have a rosary. And it was this magical moment of, I have 10 fingers. And so one by one by one, I counted off the prayers. And literally, it saved my life. I would not be here today without it. And I still say the rosary often. I am sitting here in my chair with 3 rosaries under my hand right now because I keep a Franciscan crown rosary, a Dominican rosary, and an Anglican rosary beside me at all times because I never know when I'm going to need to pray.
Even as part of my journey, when I was coming back from the darker times when I had fallen away and wandered off and was trying to find my way in life and find what meaning was, and was already disillusioned by, we'll call it the Imperial Church. Through that disillusionment, I was at that point and I was just like, well, how do I even find my way back to the light? I thought of myself as so evil and so wrong, and having done so many wrongs, there is no redemption. And you're like, here, read this. And you handed me, I think it was the exact
Yeah, it was the exact same copy.
The exact same copy. The very copy you read, I read through it. And yeah, it helped me. It was one of the things I found was so powerful with Mary and the Rosary as well. It's throughout San Luis' teaching is if you feel you're not good enough to approach God or to approach Jesus, go to the mother. There's a mother in the picture, and mothers are always accepting. They're always non-judgmental. They'll just give you that hug when you need that hug. And that was the thing that I found very true too. Because at that time I was just like, I'm too evil to go before God. Jesus is going to listen to me. I was able to make that journey and that path and found the same kind of process through that. And so I too also share a strong affinity for the Rosary and for Mary.
Before we get any well actuallys, which are probably already going to appear in the comments no matter what we do, that story I told at the beginning may or may not be true. And personally, I don't care. I say that a lot. It is the story of how we got the rosary. We do not know if this is exactly how St. Dominic came up with the idea or anything else. It may be a legend attributed later. We do know that he was in France working against the Albigensian heresy, which is a whole thing that we are not going to go into. The power of the rosary is explained in this story. It is a place where we can go back and reconnect with God, especially through the person of Jesus with Mary. Because if you've never prayed the rosary before, it is a collection of beads. There are large beads and there are small beads. And on the large beads, and Our Father is prayed, the Lord's Prayer. And on the small beads, you pray the Hail Mary. That's all it has to be. You can just pray the rosary that way. In the lead up to it, it's traditional to say a creed, a couple Our Fathers. We end each 10 Hail Marys with a glory be to the Father.
I like to think of it as it is chanting. It's a little more complex than a basic chant. It's nice because you still get all the elements out of the chant, and somebody like me who can get distracted easily, it changes. It keeps the interest and the focus.
There's actually something you're supposed to do with your mind. So traditionally, you go through the mysteries, which are broken up in groups of 5, because there are 5 sets of 10 around a traditional Dominican rosary. You go through the joyful mysteries or the luminous mysteries, which I think was brilliant when those were added to the rosary, the sorrowful mysteries, and the glorious mysteries. Those walk you through the life of Christ. I feel like I really should say the life of Mary in Christ, because Mary was present at all the moments that are mentioned in the rosary. It's a time of meditation where we really do that thing that those that come from a Christian background rarely do. That's engage with the mystery. Because it's not just rehashing a story for the sake of rehashing the story. Every time you say the decade of the Annunciation, for example, which is where the Archangel Gabriel came and told Mary that she would bear the Christ child, and Mary committed this salvific act of saying yes. We're calling on the grace of that mystery to enter our lives. Every time we say the rosary, there are formulas for this, and there's nothing wrong with using written prayers if the written prayer really speaks to you. But the way I find the rosary very powerful is taking that moment before I say the Hail Marys, before I actually say the prayers. I will mention the name of the mystery out loud. Then I'll think for a moment of what is in this mystery for me today? What can I find in the Annunciation, the visitation when she went to visit Elizabeth, in the Advent, right, when Jesus was born, or in the sorrowful mysteries, the crucifixion, or the glorious mysteries, the ascension or the assumption, all of these mysteries. What can I glean from this? What grace do I need from this today? How does this connect to my life, what I'm going through? How can I enter into this mystery and receive grace from it? That is how stories have power. And that's why the rosary has power, is because it invites us to penetrate these mysteries and not just recount them as stories, not just to sit back and go, here are what we believe are facts or anything like that. They're not something to believe in. They are moments of magic and mystery for us to penetrate and return with grace. What is the grace that we get in each of those moments? That is a powerful, powerful experience. It is an experience that I cannot recommend enough. I am a huge fan of the traditional Dominican rosary. The Franciscan rosary is different. It's just the joys. There's 7.
It's so Franciscan, focusing on the joy of life, and celebrating the joyful stories.
There are 7 sets of prayers rather than 5. It's literally a different rosary. It focuses on the joys. There's also the Rosary of the 7 Sorrows, which is set on the same set type of beads as the Franciscan beads, but focuses on all of the Via Negativa in Christ's life. Beyond that, there are the chaplets. There's the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, which Saint Faustina, I always have to correct myself because she was Blessed Faustina for most of my life and was elevated to sainthood not that long ago, or recognized as a saint not that long ago. So I still, my instinct is still to say blessed, even though I can finally say saint, which if you've not read her autobiography, her journals that she wrote, they are soul-wrenching because she goes through the dark night several times, but powerful, powerful read. There are lots of different prayers that can be said on those beads, and we could go on and on and on and on and on listing them. But you can also make your own.
That's what I find so powerful about the Rosary as I continue to develop in my spiritual growth, recognizing that in and of itself is so simple and complex all at once. It is a complex ritual structuralized by starting with chanting. The chanting creates the sacred space for you to be in for that ritual. And then the decades are then set up for the focus, the intentions, and the structure of the decades is the guided meditation. And all of that is packaged within the power of story because we're people and we work with story so well. Story can both teach and inform and allow us to reflect because the true power of story is the lessons we get out of it. The fact that it can then be timeless. That's why it's not so important to know the details or the facts of a story, but it's more of how it relates to the individual in the time that they're in. That's why, like the stories of Christ, whether Christ was on this particular boat, on this particular day, in this particular storm, doesn't matter. It's the lessons of faith and how that relates to our own life when we're going through a tough time. It's just like with the Rosary and Dominic. It's like all three of us just shared three of the same stories where we were going through a tempest in our lives. We cried out for help, and Mary answered. It was like he answered through here. Here is this both simple and complex ritual process. That's also where, as you get further into the Rosary, you start learning, following those guidelines, you can craft personal rosaries. As simple as chaplets to more complex versions.
I recommend that everyone own 2 rosaries. This is not just for like fashion's sake, but because they're useful for various things. The standard Dominican rosary, which usually when I say rosary, it's the one you're thinking. That is the most common one. Most people don't know that there are other kinds of rosaries out there. So if you just say, I need a rosary, somebody's going to show you a Dominican rosary. They are wonderful. If you've never said the rosary itself, I highly recommend it. The Chaplet of Divine Mercy is beautiful. The Chaplet of Glories is a amazing prayer. There are a lot of different prayers that can be said on it. The Anglican rosary is the second one that I think everyone should have. Granted, I think you should have all of the rosaries because I am that person. And I also love doing beadwork, so I've made most of my own rosaries. I think you should also have an Anglican rosary. Anglican rosaries are different. Anglican rosaries came about through, I would say, not the best instinct. They were kind of an anti-Catholic thing that a lot of Anglicans were saying the rosary, and they're like, it's a little anti-Catholic, maybe we should have our own. And so one was constructed. But it is a lot easier when you're starting to make your own rosaries to make them using the Anglican rosary. Structurally, it's different. On a Dominican rosary, you start with a crucifix, a large bead, 3 small beads, and a large bead. And that last large bead starts you on the cycle around the circle. Okay? So you have your intro into and then the ritual itself. The Anglican rosary has a crucifix and 2 large beads. And that second large bead takes you into the cycle. So it is simpler when you're just starting out, especially crafting your own rosaries, to think, what do I say at the beginning? What is the introductory prayer? And then right into the cycle. Also, instead of decades, where you have 10 small beads between the large beads, in a Dominican rosary, in an Anglican rosary, you have what they call the weeks, because there have been 7 beads between each of the large beads. And there are only 4 sets of them instead of 5. Okay? It's a lot easier, especially when you're just getting started, or if you want something a little bit faster that takes a little bit less time to pray, or if you're wanting to test out how does this set of prayers work, because you can always expand out and do it on a Dominican rosary. But it's a great place to start. And I actually say a lot of my personally written rosaries on an Anglican rosary. As a practitioner of Christian spirituality, it's very easy for me to structure a prayer on it. There are 4 sets of weeks, and there are 4 paths of Christian spirituality. So first week is dedicated to awe, wonder, hospitality, all of the things of the via positiva. Second week is dedicated to the via negativa, emptying, letting go, spaciousness. The third decade is dedicated to the via creativa, creativity, creation, our divinization into the divine, God as Mother, God as Father, all of those things. And the fourth one is dedicated to the Via Transformativa, justice, celebration, change, and transformation. And so I already have a template that whatever it is that I want to set up a series of prayers on, I can either write, and you only have to write 2 prayers. That's the other thing that makes this a very powerful ritual tool. What am I going to say on the large beads? What am I going to say on the small beads? I would recommend that you write 3. Your first prayer is your introductory prayer, where you're setting your dedication for what you're doing. And then what are you going to say on the large beads and the small beads? Very simple. 3 prayers. You can either write 3 prayers, find 3 prayers. I do not recommend, there's this trend that I've started seeing in rosaries lately, where there's a different prayer for each of the beads.
Yeah, because you start losing the space that's been created. Because part of the power is that in the chanting, you're creating that space for your mind to steep itself in. Because the repetitive chanting is actually to distract the physical body from all the BS that the physical body has. Distract the brain from all the physical noise that the brain just has in general.
The prayers should be something short and simple and easy for you to say, so that once you get used to reciting them, your body is just reciting them and praying them, and you can meditate on whatever it is that you're there to enter this meditation on. But the Anglican Rosary, like I said, is very simple because, again, it's correlation with the 4 paths of creation spirituality, with it having 4 parts. Also, it's shorter. So if the Rosary isn't working, you're not investing a lot of time in it, or like me, I feel weird stopping in the middle of prayers and constructed a rosary that isn't working. It's not that many prayers to finish because most people I started praying, I need to finish the prayers. But you can do the same thing on the Dominican Rosary. And for me, the 5th path that I put in is at the very end. I put in what I call the Via Media, the middle way, which is where the 4 all dance together. How does this all find harmony? So the first 4, I do the regular 4 paths of creation spirituality, but that last one to me is the Via Media. It's where all 4 paths are being danced, and you have a foot in one and a foot in another, and maybe a hand in a third, right? It's how does it all come together?
For fans of Venn diagram, it's the juicy middle.
It's that wonderful middle.
All overlays.
So much. But it's a wonderful practice to get into, and you can dedicate them to the Divine Feminine. I highly recommend praying to the Blessed Mother Mary. Mary and I have a very strong relationship. She has saved my life more times than I can imagine. I can't imagine my life without Mary. I'm getting emotional. Just the thought of that, brought tears to my eyes almost. Woo! But you can dedicate a rosary to any of the spirits, any of the saints, any of the ancestors that you want. I often will say the rosary for the dead at funerals, which is a specific chaplet with specific prayers that I find helps me with the mourning and grieving process. But you can establish a rosary for anything that you need. And you don't have to perform a rosary more than once. When we talk about our magic practice, I think rosaries are a great tool for that. You can just use scripture. When you're going through something, maybe take a quote from a psalm that relates to what you're dealing with and have that be your prayer. Maybe a quote from Jesus, a quote from whatever scripture really moves you, a quote from a poem, and use it as that space for meditation. Because the one thing that I can say about Our Lady is that she wants us to pray and be connected in the divine cosmic Christ that is her Son. And the road that we take to get there doesn't matter. So I don't think that Our Lady only wants you praying her rosary.
I know from my experience, I was being a little experimental. It was a wonderfully fun thing where I took the traditional Dominican rosary and I actually walked the path of the 5 powers. Om Mani Padme Hum was the prayer for each of the small beads, opening myself up for wisdom. And then for each of the main ones, I just recited what each of the different power was. It was an extremely powerful journey, and it really helped all that to just sink in. If nothing else, it was a great study tool. It's a great ritualizing study. Every now and then, it's an extremely powerful meditation on the process.
I did much the same thing, except for instead of the mantra for Avalokiteshvara, I used Manjushri's mantra, Avarapashana Dahi, and used that instead because I needed to cut through the BS in my life and in my brain and get to where I needed to. And I
Yeah.
needed Munchaushri with that flaming sword of discernment to cut through things. That was very powerful. I have in the past, when I was sick, used the rosary and I prayed We Fly to Your Patronage, O Holy Mother, on the large beads, and on the small beads, I did the Tara mantra, Tara Ture, let's say, Om Tara Tu Tara Ture, Soha, and use that for healing. You can use whatever prayers work for you, whatever prayers connect you to it. But the real power of the rosary is not just in the words that you say, which is why I highly recommend you keep the words simple and something you can remember.
Yeah.
They are important, but the real power of the rosary is once you've said it enough that you have that freedom. And if you've ever prayed the rosary, you know what I'm talking about. It's hard to describe to somebody who's never done it before, but you get to this point where it's almost an out-of-body experience. Your body is still chanting. You can hear your body chanting. You can feel the beads slipping through your fingers, but you are liberated, you're free, and you can enter this place of pure meditation. My most common prayer is I often will pray the Chakti, which is the Orthodox. It's a prayer rope. They usually use a knotted rope rather than beads, but it's just saying the Jesus prayer over and over and over and over again. Holy Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Sometimes Holy Jesus, Son of God. Two versions of it, Son of God, Son of David, but sometimes Son of Man. I guess there are three. Whatever is useful for you, because again, all spirituality and all spiritual practice needs to be practical. If you try the rosary, and I will say you have to give it a good try. You need to do it for a month or so, like really give it a try. Because if you're new to the prayers that you're using, it's going to be hard. You have to get to the point where you have the prayers memorized. And if memorization is impossible for you, and it is for some people, that's fine. That's fine. Maybe try one of the mantras that we've talked about before that's very simple and easier to do. But you need to get to the point where whatever you're saying, you can just say without thinking, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. And move on and move on. But that, you don't have to think about it. There's no hesitation. There's no pause. Because once you get to that point, that's where the power of the rosary comes in.
Yeah. Yeah. Spiritual practice is personal. And I come from a much more of that airy-fairy side of spiritual practice. A lot of that structure is not part of me. And so even in that, I would definitely recommend trying it 10 times and seeing, because I don't do it that often, but every now and then I still find myself, I will pick it up. And it took doing it multiple times first to get to understand. And when I do pick it up, I can then just flow right with it.
I like the term folk Catholic. I've seen that a lot over the years as somebody who still practices something akin to Catholicism, but without the apparatus.
Yeah, none of the imperialism.
Yeah.
I would probably definitely be lumped in the Desert Father side of things.
So have you ever prayed the rosary? What is your experience with rosaries, chaplets, and the like? Let us know. I'd love to hear from you. Do you write your own? Do you have experiences that you would like to share? We'd love to hear from you. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, you can leave a comment right there, but they won't let us know. So please take that comment and go over to preciousfast.com, click on chat, and you can post it there because they will let us know, and we'll be able to have a conversation with you. And while you're there, if you have a few dollars you can pass our way, you can sign up for a membership. It really does help us to keep the lights on, keep food on our table, keep a roof over our heads. Thank you to everybody who does that, by the way, because I know we're all struggling right now. If you want to support us in other places, you can find me on Ko-fi and Patreon. I'm C. Dorset on both. And if you don't have any money, that's perfectly all right. Just share what we're doing. It really does help get the word out, because that is really why we're doing it. We would just like to be able to do this as our full-time job, because there's a lot that we want to talk about, a lot of things that we want to do, and it'd be really wonderful to be able to focus exclusively on this and not take outside.
As I like to say, the spirit is more than willing. The flesh has its limitations.
The flesh is trapped in a capitalistic world that is forcing.
So there's only so much time of the day that I can push this body to do things before it goes, you're stopping now. My spirit doesn't like to be told no in that sense, but the body will force shutdowns if I don't comply to a degree. And so being able to concentrate that time very good and helpful.
Thank you for listening, and may Our Lady of the Rosary grant you the grace to find the prayers that will take you into those special places that you need to go to return with wisdom, compassion, and blessings. Amen.
Amen.